And now it's here. Or should I say, I am.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Marvel Buddies podcast. Happy Halloween, and sorry that I missed you guys last week. I'm sorry for not being there. Stuck with a lot of homework and school issues and whatnot. But I got it all done for today so that I can bring you this special Halloween episode of Werewolf by Night. Um, Originally, he was supposed to be my plan for Halloween, with Elsa Bloodstone being my last week's episode. But since I never got to cover her, I promised Monday, what is that, the 7th or something like that? The 6th? Yeah. I promised the 6th I will cover Elsa Bloodstone. But um we've got we've got to talk a lot about Werewolf by Night in our previous episodes of like Marvel Buddies, but we never actually talked about Jack Russell and like his backstory, right? He Werewolf by Night debuted February of 1972. I think it was February 2nd or February 1st. He debuted in Marvel Spotlight #2. Here it is, February. Yeah, February of 1972. Um, and now this character went through a bunch of people before actually debuting. He was an idea made by Roy Thomas. The name was given by Stan Lee, and then the creative team was Jerry Conway and Mike Ploog. But Werewolf by Night just got released on Disney Plus. It is a like special, so it's a one episode thing, 55 minutes long, or a really short movie. Um, and we're talking about Jack Russell, right? So Jack is a lycanthrope, or like the term used to describe like the technical definition of a werewolf, right? Jack has the normal, super strength, super speed, um, peak human ability, super stamina, super agility, reflexes, acute senses of hearing, durabilities. He has the claws and the fangs. Um, Plus, he also has a healing factor. Every single character in Marvel has a healing factor, so of some sorts. His may not be as potent as someone like Deadpool or Wolverine, but he still does have one. Um, and an expertise with the occult. However, Jack has no special training, like he's not a fighter or anything, and he because he's a werewolf has a big weakness to silver, and he also didn't look like he did when I covered him in Moon Knight for Moon Knight's debut. Um, in Werewolf by Night #32, they changed him around that time, right before the comic. But if you guys want to see that episode of Moon Knight, the YouTube link is in the comments. But we are starting with Werewolf by Night here. So, first night, it kind of goes into him already being a werewolf, but he's in disbelief. And instead of being the story taking place in New York, it takes place in downtown LA, which is different from almost every other superhero. I think this is the second time we're talking about LA. But yeah, as I thought, in a dream, I found myself walking a mist moistened street in downtown LA. Something was crawling with me, raging to be released. My mind felt dull and hazy, and I couldn't think. And here's this guy just walking around. He's trying to mug Werewolf by Night, not knowing when he turns the corner that it's actually Jack Russell's Werewolf by Night. He turns the corner, and this dude is already like, "What the hell did I just do?" And so he obviously, because he's a giant werewolf, kills him and beats the crap out of him. And the LA police officer comes and is like, "Hold it right there! I just saw you kill this guy." And then he was like, "What the hell? You're not an actual person, right?" Um, and then there's some creative design here. Even as a man who's pure of heart and says his prayers at night, many may become a wolf, and then the wolf's bane blooms. The moon is full and bright, and it's an old folk poem. But anyway, cop comes and sees him, and Werewolf by Night tries to escape. And he's like, something inside me made me run. Thought with all my sane soul I wanted to stay and kill. And the guy's like, this is some sort of animal, but the way it runs is like a man, right? Because he's bipedal. He's like, there's a bridge in a muddy river. I dived in, my shoulder afire with the agony of a glancing bullet, right? And the cop clipped him and shot him. And then here he goes running through an alley. Here, I'll zoom in here. There you go. And he's like, somehow I got away, stumbled back to the alleys to the stench of things decayed. The city stench repelled me. I yearned for the odors of the forest, the sofa feel of loam beneath my feet. Where am I? How did I get here? What is this place? These buildings, where the trees, the hills. Right? He kind of just turned a corner and didn't know where now he's lost. Right? He just keeps running and running, and he's like, questioning himself. Why am I here? Why is my skin burning? Why am I here? But the night gave me no answer, and I felt my dark dream slipping in a moment, and then he ends up waking up. Right? Here he is, Jack Russell. Later on, they do change his hairstyle. He looks like a redhead here, but he goes blonde. But he wakes up and he's like, no, screaming really loud. He's like, what? I'm home. Was that a dream? Right? Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know that he's a werewolf, right? And now the whole thing with him is that because he's a werewolf, on the night of a full moon, he'll turn into a werewolf, right? Or he that's how it goes. Um, this this is kind of like not always, because it's a comic book and it's a superhero comic book. It's not always the what's the word I'm looking for? Like they don't tend to keep it accurate. They tend to jump around with things, and so he wakes up and he thinks he had this dream, and he's like, each time I have it, the dream, it grows worse. Once those images were only vague, like distant threats, but now it's almost seemed real. Careful kid, pull yourself together, right? And he's telling himself that maybe I'm just a touch hysterical, and why not? Today I'm legal, a full-fledged half hunk of draft bait. 18 years old, huh? And this is, him becoming an adult. He's 18 years old today. It's his birthday. Um, I posted that one twice. My bad. But he's like, my arm is slashed just as I'd been cut. In the dream, as a policeman's bullet. Suddenly, it all came flooding back. That dream, was it that dream? Was it a dream? Lord, if it was, it felt real, right? And in comes this lady, like, Jack, did you hear me knocking, darling? It's almost time for breakfast. Like, yeah, no, mom. Your father wants us to eat together like a great big happy family. Don't fret. I'll be right down, right? And so here he comes, and he's like, believe me, I was glad for the interruption. The kind of thought I was having usually leads to a shrink. And in comes his sister. He's like, wish me happy birthday. I'm on my way to fame and fortune. He's like, sure you are, but maybe if you'd open your eyes, you'd see that other people weren't so overwhelmed with joy. And it was his mom, right? And he's like, um, so Grant's down, mother's back again, right? And so Grant is his stepdad, which he hates because it doesn't, he's a not the right kind of person. He's a not good person. And this guy is someone that Grant sent to pretty much like keep an eye on his family, and he's treating them like shit because he's not part of their family, right? So, mom gave in as always. He ruled her like a tyrant, and sometimes I think he had other plans. This is Grant. Um, and he's like, don't let him beat on you, mom. You don't have to. And she's telling him like, Jack, please, Philip and I understand each other. Don't talk that way about him, please. Don't. And his mom isn't in the best condition, right? Like she's a bit older and she's kind of like not the best, right? But he's like, whatever, mom. See you tonight. Right now, I've some heavy thinking to do, and he heads out. He's like, it was a cool day. I drove down to Malibu, and later that evening I drove back, right? And here he is at this kind of like party thing. He's like, Jack Russell, are you listening to me? As his family or whatever. He's like, you look like you're miles away. He's like, yeah, sorry. There's just something about the air I don't. And in comes his mom. He's like, excuse me, Terry, Jack, dear, it's time for a little cake cutting. And he's like, the others are waiting for you. He's like, they are they? And he's like, is something wrong? You look pale. He's like, I don't know, something's happening to me. And this is when, behind the full moon, right? He starts to rip out his shirt because he feels like something wants to come out of him, and he, holding his head, he's like, get away from me, don't come near me, have to get away from here. And he runs away, right? Blackness blistered inside me, swelling up over, devouring me. As I could see was all I could see was the moon, right? So this is another kind of thing of like, if full moons only happen once a month, why was he a werewolf yesterday, right? Was it really a dream if he got shot in the arm, right? And so like this is that whole like inconsistency kind of thing, but whatever. Um, Also, I hope you guys got the name Jack Russell because like, isn't it like a breed of dog or something like that? Jack Russell is his name because he's a dog, you know? Funny, haha. Um, but yeah, anyway, he's like thinking he's like, I can't let them see me. Something's inside me trying to get out, ripping apart, and that's how I wanted it to stay. And he turns the corner. There's some dude working on his car, and he's like, "Who's there?" And then he goes, how it is, and he's like, something must be the shadows, and he's jumped like down into like the ocean. I'm assuming like Pacific. Um, and there he is. It's like wet and whatnot, and he has to be on like some sort of beach, and he's like, mud ran through between my fingers, soaked through my cloth at my knees. My vision is blurred, and when it cleared, I saw a thing that made me scream. My hand, and it's all furry and brown, and he, looks into the water and he sees his face, and it's all, you know, hideous and whatnot. And then he knew, and this is what he looked like when he first debuted, and he kind of looked like a really hairy monkey or like a porcupine, but it looks like a gorilla instead of like a werewolf. But I mean, also, yeah, yeah. Jack at this moment, Jack doesn't know um that he is a werewolf, or that he he how he gained this ability to become a werewolf, right? He just kind of thinks it's a dream. Um but he starts wandering, second night, and he starts wandering around, and he finds this mansion, right? This abandoned mansion, and he's like, he is here, right? And so he walks in, and there's been rumors, all these tales of roving packed wild dogs hunting Western LA. I'd read the papers, knew the stories, but now a darker part of myself was lingering me inward, because now I know the truth. And he pretty much busts in, and there's this wolf that comes in and attacks him, right? And you know, for he can't what is a small one, a wolf. He's shrunken, ugly, and yet I can hate him, for he can hunt the forest, he can run the land, and for that I must kill him. And so, he pretty much, the dog or the wolf, lunges at him and tries to like bite at him, but before he can, he grabs onto him by like the his like arms, and the dog is like like biting and whatnot and growling, and he like slams it, like chucks it like a little kid into a wall, and it gets back up because it's not a child but a wolf, and they start to do that like encircling movement, and it jumps again. It ends up biting him, but he kind of falls back into the window, and then from there they're by the cliffside, and because he is stronger, because he is a werewolf, he kicks him over the ledge and like pretty much kills the dog before howling into the night and walking away. And he's like wandering until a swelling roar filled my ears, and my eyes were washed with burning light, and the beast who was myself died. And he passes out in front of the mansion, right when the night turns to day, because werewolves are only out in the day, right? And so, this guy comes in, he's like, Jack, Jack, good lord, boy, where have you been? We've been searching for you everywhere, Jack. And they, pick him up, and he's like, can you walk? Try to get to your feet, son. He's like, blasted, Lisa, don't stand there gnawing. Get inside and fix him some coffee, right? And he's like, I'm okay, Dad, I'm okay. And he sits inside. He's like, Lisa, you're crying. What's wrong? And he's like, she can't answer you, Jack. He's like, well, why not? Your sister's almost hysterical. Or are you too tied up in yourself to not? Are you too tied up in yourself to not notice? He's like, Dad, please tell me what's happening. He's like, tell you, if you'd been here, you'd know. Your mother was almost killed last night. She's lucky to be alive. Something went wrong with the brakes on her car. She was searching for you, Jack. The rolls went out of control, and we found her in a ditch 2 miles down the hill. Right. So his mom, she wasn't already in the best condition, but now she's in the hospital, and you know, Jack is kind of like also, like, I need to go to a hospital because I feel weird, right? And he's like, I can't just watch me, doc, and he gave him a shot to relax, whatever. He's on the phone, and when he wakes up, he goes out and looks for his mom. He's like, Mom, Lord, how could I sleep while she's, in the hospital? And he goes to look for her, and he's like, Mrs. Russell. And he's like, sorry, son, she's on the critical list. That means no one can enter, no one can see her. He's like, great, thanks. And he ends up waiting for all the doctors to look away before sneaking into his mom's room, right? And then I make my dramatic entrance. Lord, Jack, is that you? Yeah, it's me, the professional prodigal son, always too late and always too little and too late. He's like, what is this? You're sounding much too maudlin, Jack. And he's like, smile for, please try to smile for mom. He's like, sure, and he's crying, right? Because he knows that it's kind of like his fault. She went out and whatnot. And she's like, Jack, you feel sorry for yourself. Your father would be ashamed, but you don't even know your father, do you? He's like, no, you never knew what kind of a man he really was. And he's like, Mom, he's like, don't stop me, Jack. I won't be stopped. This is part of your heritage. I always ignored, pretend it didn't exist, but now I'm dying and you have to be told, right? And this is kind of when she gets into his backstory, right? He's like, come on, Mom, don't say that. You'll live longer than me. It's like, Jack, you don't understand. I've done you a terrible wrong. I've given you a curse, right? One that will live with you forever, right? And she's like, a curse. Here, I'll zoom in for you guys, because I know some of you guys like to read. She's like, a curse, and he's like, I don't understand. How could you? He's like, did you know your father for what he was? A coarse, rough man, a strong man, a fine man, a man I met in a small Baltic state while just a student on holiday abroad. I married and bore a son, right? So, she went overseas to college and whatnot and met this dude. He's like, you know, and he calls him. He's like, Jacob, you're a big lad, Abe, big like your father, bright like your mother, right? Um, and here he is in this like castle. And the first 2 years were idyllic. Yet even then, when we lived his family's castle, even when you were born, and your sister Lisa was on the way, I could sense something some dark secret that stood between us. A secret that blossomed like some wicked fruit once a month when he would lock himself in a single musty tower and remain there for a trilogy of days and trilogy of nights, right? And so he told me he studied his books on those nights, and for 2 years I tried to believe him until that night of the storm when a bolt of lightning tore out of the side of the tower. So like a lightning struck and broke the tower, and for later that same night in the village below, on a rain-slicked cobbled street, the first stone of our life together crumbled, and the village carpenter made his way homeward through the streets, but never made it home. And never made it home again, right? And it was Jack's dad who was a werewolf, and those genes were passed on to Jack as Jack kind of ripped up the carpenter, right? And so he's like, he comes to her. He's like, "I'm lady. We need the Baron's aid. We do. Everybody knows he's the most educated man in the land. With um, what with those books about demons and all. What if he reads what he reads if you you catch my meaning?" He's like, "Why? He's upstairs in the tower this way, gentlemen." And they go and he's gone, right? He's like, "But he wasn't there, Jack, and it was the only thing that I began to realize the nightmare I'd become a part of." And he's like, the demon must have taken the Baron too, right? And so they go out to hunt him, and he's like, he's in the shadows, and they all turn. The dog is barking at him, and it's a werewolf, and they pump him in the stomach. Um, the bullet must have been made of silver. He's like, for you see, the men came to me later and told me the horrible secret they'd uncover, and suddenly I knew why I'd been forbidden to enter my husband's tower from tower room, and why the peasants had loaded their guns with silver bullets, right? And it's him, it's the Baron, my father, a werewolf. Then maybe that explains it all. How could I have told you, Jake? Um, I'd really like the family tone. I'd read the family tomes. Knew it was a hereditary curse, one that you may well have been damned with, or even little Lisa, and the curse to become a man like Beast first on the night of your 18th year, and forevermore whenever the full moon blooms. And that's why you returned to the States and married Philip Russell to wipe out my father's real bloodied memory. He's like, no, Jack, I love Philip. He's been a good husband and tried to be a good father. Promise me you'll honor him. Never raise your hand against him. Swear to me, Jack. And he's like, I swear, if that's what you want, that's what I'll do, right? And again, he begins to turn himself into a werewolf as his mother passes, right? Here you can see her arm kind of like limping off to the side, and the doctor comes in when she starts flatlining, and they see this giant werewolf, right? So everyone's like, this is the guy that's to blame, and he jumps backwards out of the hospital and starts to run deep into like these what they South Street, I guess, into this warehouse. He's like, but why can't I go to the forest? The forest to the forest, and there why my um and there await my prey. Struggling for control over the bestial side of my being, I felt my mastery slipping, but just before I heard sounds, and this time it's not me. and this time it's not a sorry a brother of the wild. He is Grant, the one who killed that woman. He is the one I must kill in turn, right? And so it's they kind of played as his instincts are to go because he is an anti-hero very much. His instincts are to go after those who are like not good people. Like it's almost like he knows, but also sometimes he'll just go after like innocent people. But you know, he goes after people who are his like instincts kind of tell him not to go for like innocent people and more for like people who have done wrong, right? And so like this guy, you know, killed a woman, right? So he's like, I threw myself forward, a full weight slamming against Grant's back. It staggered him, but he didn't fall. He's like, what the devil? And he turns like, pretty boy, I don't know why you're wearing that mask, but it doesn't scare me not one bit. And he's like, he doesn't realize that he's fighting a werewolf, right? And so he's beating up the guy thinking it's a dude, right? He's like, did that slimy crud Russell send you, trying to get out of paying me my dough? Well, here's something you could tell me, Russell. Max Grant doesn't play games with 10,000 bills, right? And anybody I do business with um had better not try. So that mask must have protected you a bit, but not anymore, right? And he starts beating him up, and he chucks him over into like a box of whatever, and then he stands over him, right? And he again thinks that this is some dude in a mask, so he grabs him by the neck and he tells him, "What are you, some kind of nut? If Russell did send you, he sure knows how to pick his boys. Would have thought he'd thank me for getting rid of that old broad." And on hearing that, I went mad, right? Crazy, right? Crazy. You're crazy. Think you can strangle me? Think again, punk. Just you think again. Only one guy is walking out of here, and it won't be you, right? So Grant, his stepdad, hired this guy to cut the brakes on his mom's car so that she could be sent to the hospital and die, right? And so here he is, kind of like choking him out, and he's like, sheer weight carried me down. I felt my snarl in my throat die as his fingers tightened, and then it began to happen. Something in my eyes, something in the stench of animal hatred told him. He's like, your face. That's not a mask. It's not. And he ended up, the guy, right, because he realized he was fighting a werewolf, where it was kind of like shocked, and he lost his fear, he lost his courage, and he got filled up with fear. He's like, and I broke his grip. I drove him backwards. His fading nerves shattered, and he ran. This is a creature who fought me so hard, who runs when fight begins to turn. No matter, there is no time for pity and no time for any thought. And he's like, it's crazy, it's insane. You're real. And then he jumps onto him, latches onto his back, and kind of like starts to eat him up or whatever. And there he is, and he's like, no time for any thought except for the thought of death, right? Of that, I know nothing, but it's my edited memory, a real blackout, or something I've since blocked from thought because the nightmare became too real, right? And in comes Grant, right? He's like, when I um and when it was done and I rose from the dead from the dead one, I heard a voice and saw him. I know him. He sent this one. He's the one who truly killed that woman, and he in turn must pay. And the guy comes in. He's like, Grant, the beast has stolen my rational plans, had made his own judgments. How could I be sure just what part in my mother's dead my stepfather had been playing in? And he's like, Grant, are you here? And pretty much, he's like, I have $10,000, every bill of it cursed up, black and red. And he's like, Laura died tonight. I'm a rich man. Doesn't that make you feel better? Doesn't that make you feel glad, right? And here he is, like he's going to try and kill him because he knows that this guy pretty much just wanted his wife dead so he could get the life insurance money and take that money to pay his debt. But his like the memory of his mom saying like, promise me you'll never raise your hand against him and swear to me, Jack. So he can't hurt him, and he watches him as he leaves, right? And then yells into the night, screams into the night because he knows he's helpless. Before I realized one more thing, something that was already dissolving in the animal rage, even as the thought that held it formed. What could revenge matter? What could it ever matter to a boy, now a man, now a wolf, right? And that's how it ends. Um, and it's here that it ends, and I would typically talk about his first comic, right? So this is where he debuted, and then I would usually talk about like Werewolf by Night #1, right? But we already covered that back in the Darkhold episode. I'm pretty sure it was the first one. when he tries to steal the Darkhold from Ulysses, the guy on the wheelchair, and if you remember, I think Addix was like yelling and screaming, um, and like trying to mock poor dude on a wheelchair. Um, but you know, if you guys want to watch that one, it's links in the YouTube. Links in the chat for the YouTube. Um, so I brought you a different one. This is Giant-Sized Werewolf by Night number 4, where Werewolf by Night takes on Morbin Time himself, Morbius, the living vampire, right? It's like all new. So they have two of them. I only brought you the first one because it was more interesting. Because this one he fights Morbius and twice, and in the other one it's just him being a werewolf. Which I mean can be scary, but Morbin Time, you know. So Panic at the La Brea Tar Pits as Night Beast battles Night Stalker, Morbius, the living vampire. Um, and so the other one is just because there's a like blood moon, and so but it's still technically a full moon, so he still turns into a werewolf. But anyway, as you can see, this is giant-sized werewolf by night. This is, if I'm not mistaken, still before Moon Knight number 32, meaning that he still kind of looks a little weird. Um, yeah. So, Stanley presents Werewolf by Night. If I'm not mistaken, I can actually tell you guys who wrote this one. This is, take a look here. Um, let's see. Pull up the comic. I think it's the same guy, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. This one was written by, oh god, I'm gonna have a hard time saying this name. Doug Moench, I think is his name. Um, yeah. This one was written by Doug Moench. Let's see what else he wrote. He wrote Moon Knight, The Thunderbolts, Guardians of the Galaxy, Shang-Chi, Excalibur, which is the X-Men group, with like Captain Britain, X-Men Havoc. He wrote a lot of X-Men. Mar- oh, Marvel Comics presents Wolverine and Man-Thing. Yeah, this is a couple of comics where Wolverine tussles with Man-Thing. He writes a lot of that. Um, let's see. Um, Marvel Fanfare, which if I'm not mistaken is, who the hell is this? This is some kid, bro. This is kind of funny actually. It's like some dwarf or something. Hold on, I gotta look this up. Is this a real thing? Hold on, I gotta look at this. Is like there's some kid here, bro. Like who is this? Number 26. This is the one I was looking at. These two. This one. So it's like this kid, bro. I don't even think I'm allowed to show this, bro. I'm about to get into some like EDP kind of trouble right here, bro. But it's like dwarves or something. Yeah, bro. I'm before I get banned, bro. Before I get into some what up, Crown. But yeah, apparently this same guy wrote Werewolf by Night with Morbin Time here. But anyway, this one, yeah, Doug Moench right here. And then if you guys want to see who wrote this comic, uh, apparently I don't know who this is, but apparently he's written a lot of like Wolverine and a lot of like occult characters. Man Thing being one of them. He's also written some crap, I guess. I mean, to be fair, I've never read Marvel Fanfare, but it looked kind of weird, so I can't, you know. What's up? What's up, Josh? But yeah. Anyway, so in the MCU, he's only been in one thing, but he has his own show, right? In Marvel Comics, he helps the Midnight Suns. Um, but but you know, since he isn't, you know, like would we he we should if they're doing a Midnight Suns team because again, I really wanted to show you I know you haven't seen it but I really wanted to show it to you three of the characters in Werewolf by Night, which are the three that I planned on covering, eventually become part of the Midnight Suns team, right? The other characters include Doctor Strange, who kind of organizes the team in the shadows. He's not an active member, but he is there originally. If I remember, we covered this during Blade, but Blade is also part of it. There's one Ghost Rider, both Ghost Riders. Donnie Blaze and if I'm not mistaken, it's Richard Reyes is the other guy. I forgot his first name. His last name is Reyes. Um, but both of them are there. They're both Ghost Riders. Like on motorcycles. And then eventually Brother Voodoo joins. And then Elsa Bloodstone, who eventually joins. She is a monster hunter. If you guys remember Jessica Jones, the Jessica Jones episode, she was in that. Um, the British girl with the red hair. She smashed Jessica Jones in with a guitar. Highly recommend watching that one if you guys haven't seen it. But he like if he were to show up in the MCU, um, he would he would eventually be in the MC or be a part of the Midnight Suns, right? Um, Morbius, one of the Midnight Suns characters, that he meets here. I'm assuming this is prior to the making of the Midnight Suns. Again, it, it's what I know Marvel is trying to build up to. Like Marvel dropped Werewolf by Night as their like horror kind of like their first taste of horror. It wasn't scary. Um, it wasn't a scary thing. Um, but you know. But anyway, um, here he is, right? Kind of like messing around in the streets or whatnot, and out walks Werewolf by Night into the streets of LA where there's a bunch of dudes out there and he's like, yo, cease him if you don't lay down that cue real nice and slow. I'm gonna make you wish you never picked it up because it's gonna be rammed right up your. And then he starts growling and these guys turn around and they're all, you know, afraid. And he's like, I saw more filth and fear, filled its race. They what is it? They gaped at me in horror, but I had already fallen into a crouch and he lunges at them and whatnot. They fall back and stumble over their fear as though it were a tangible obstacle. And so here he is. Pretty much, these dudes are just outside of like some sort of bar or whatever, like messing with someone, and their Werewolf by Night turns around and on who is this, bro? Like I know this is Josh, but like who you, bro? Hold it here, bro. Hold it here, bro. I'm not opening that. All right. Anyway, I'm just gonna get back to the stream. Um, there you go. Problem solved. Sorry, Josh. I don't know who you were, but had to ban you. Sending me probably like child porn links or something like that. Anyway, um, Werewolf by Night here clearly, scaring these people away, and he walks away from um the city, and there's this lady, right, roaming the night, somewhere else in LA, and as they say, her memories locked deep in her mind, horrible memories, but now they're nothing but forgotten corridors leading to madness. Thus, she walks through confusion, disoriented, estranged, her consciousness numbered to all she passes, including a bizarre rooftop observer. And there he is, Morbius, the living vampire. And in his head, he's like, I found her, right? She swoops down and whatnot, and he flies downwards, glides to her, and confronts her, and she's like, "Who's this?" And he's like, "Martine, it's me. Don't you remember me? Don't you remember who I am? I was your fiance, Martine. I'm Morbius, right?" And she's like, "I can't remember," because she has some sort of amnesia, right? And she's like, "Martine, I was not always like like this. I was human once, merely um sorry, hold on. This is kind of annoying, bro. Um, I wasn't always like this. I was human. I must surely you must remember me. This happiness we shared, the hopes and dreams." He's like, "I don't remember anything." He's like, "You're in shock, Martine," from Damon's spell, and this is from a different comic. And he's like, "He possessed your mind, but you're free now. Damon is dead. His control shattered. Here he is. Try to remember, Martine. There was a battle between Damon and the caretakers, and you escaped from it. Again, um, if you guys want me to cover this, you guys know the link to it. Um, but yeah, there she is. He's like, "You've been wandering in shock ever since." He's like, "It's taken me months to find you, Martine." She's like, "Damon, yes, I remember him, remembering his eyes, boring into my soul, remember me, sucking me dry. I remember him." He's like, "You must remember me, Martine. Look back at me, Martine, and try to remember what I was. You loved me, and we were happy, darling. I was a scientist. You eventually accompanied me to accept the Nobel Prize. And then during the course of my experiment, I contracted a rare blood disease. You insisted joining me at sea to be at my side as I attempted to cure myself in a shipboard laboratory. I injected myself with the enzyme extracted from the blood of a bat, but I failed to rid myself of the disease. Martine, and the cure backfired with the disastrous results that disastrous results. And rather than face you, and I hurled myself from that ship because I knew what I might do to you. I knew what I had become, knew that Morbius, the award-winning biochemist, was dead, and in his place stood Morbius, the living vampire, right? I was like, "Vampire, yes." And he's like, "I remember it all now. Michael, please hold me." And she comes down, or Michael comes down and holds her tight. "I know, my darling, I've tried to stay away from you, to protect you from what I've become, but it's no use, Martine. I need you. I'm too weak to face my existence alone. I've struggled through the isolation and despair, searching for a cure. There was no cure to be found." Um, and then he kind of starts to feel this like hollow. He's like then without warning, a hollow pang spiking the center of his empty being, a fierce lust coursing through his veins like fires and ice. And he smells her blood, so he's kind of like, it's the bloodthirst. He's like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "Why are you so tense, Michael?" He's like, "Are you all right, Michael?" He's, "Yes, I'm all right." And as you could see, his eyes, bloodshot, because he needs blood, right? And so he's like, "What are we going to do, Michael?" He's like, "I don't know." But they're across. He's like, he can tell us, he can sense, Morbius can sense Werewolf by Night's presence. He's like, "The werewolf was mad, and there was nothing I could do about it. The night had almost passed, and still the forest eluded him, and is hidden somewhere beyond this gritty jumble of concrete." He had changed the city far and he had ranged the city far and wide, and now the frustration had become something something become a seething desire for violence. If he could not find his precious freedom, he would vent his anger and savagery using my hideous transformed hands and to slay the very first thing which crossed his path. And he's like, "Michael, what is it?" He's like, "I don't know, Martine, but get behind me." And so obviously this is where we have that fight of Werewolf by Night and um Morbius, the living vampire. Werewolf by Night jumps him, and Morbius kind of like kicks him in the stomach and knocks him over. And so Werewolf by Night gets up, and she's like, "Michael, run, don't fight from him." And Werewolf by Night starts to slash at him, because again, he has no special training. He's an animal, right? So he starts to slash him. And so my foe reeled back and crumbled into a stunned daze. He was vulnerable now, and the werewolf stalked towards the kill. He's like, "No, you can't kill him. I won't let you kill him." And then when the woman stridently intervened, she distracted the werewolf, swerved me away from my mission of murder. And he's like, he pretty much lunges at Martine. For those who have seen Werewolf, I don't, or Morbius, the living vampire, um, this is Dr. Bancroft, the girl on the boat. I forgot who she was played by. Um, but pretty much um the love interest in Morbius the movie, right? But here he is lunging at Werewolf by Night, and um pretty much he jumps on him and he's like, you'll die now, beast. And nighttime starts to turn to daytime. So when Werewolf by Night, or when Morbius bites Werewolf by Night here, he starts to turn back into a normal human, right? And so he bites at him and turns back into, a person. And he's like, how can this be? This is not the creature that attacked me. And so she's like, we gotta leave now. The light will weaken you. And he's like, people will be coming soon. And he's like, who is he? Who is this person? And he's like, how did he change? What have I done? And the two of them leave back into the city, and they're at a hotel, right, where Michael can rest at during the day so he can hunt at night, right? She gives him this key, and she's like, I found something in my pocket, something I didn't even know I had, but something which might be able to tell us where I was, what I did. All that time I was in shock. It's the key to the post office box, the tag list. It had it has belonged to the La Brea station, and the box of the number of the box is stamped on the key itself. But we can't go now. But he's like, why? It's is it dark yet? He's like, it will be in about 10 minutes. Then we only have to wait 10 minutes before unlocking the secret of your amnesia. We'll leave here by the fire escape. And so when while they're doing that, my Jack is in his hospital bed. He's like, how long have I been here? And he's like, since this morning. Dr. Garrity brought you in. You were laying in front of his store, and there was a lot of blood. It looks like you were bitten by a dog, right? So the plausible belief being that he was bitten by a dog, right? And so the only way you can avoid getting rabies shots is if you can describe. He's like, forget that. What time is it? And he's like, just after 6. Is it dark yet? And he's like, just about. Which reminds me, I might as well close the blinds. She was too late. When she goes to cover the blinds, he's like, say, you never did tell me who you are. Um, and she's like, they're all set for the night. And when she turns around, he's already kind of like ripped out the IV in him. He's turned into the werewolf and pushed her aside. And then he tried to like the clothes kind of came off of him, and all the like nurses are on him. His clothes are ripping off, and he literally runs out the front door, right? Breaks through a window and runs away, right? He's like, I never did tell the nurse who I was, but whatever answer I could have given her would have only been half the truth. It's the 6:30 at the La Brea station of the Greater Los Angeles Postal Service. The doors here are locked at 5, and Morbius pretty much breaks in. He opens up the key, he opens up the lock, and when he opens it, there's a piece of paper, right? And he goes to see Dr. Bancroft, or Marlene, I think her name was. Martine, yeah, and he walks out and he's like, "This, it's a single sheet of paper which will act as a map to the road to my salvation." He's like, "What are you talking about, right?" He's like, and it's an equation, a complex biochemical formula, too complicated to immediately decipher, but I recognize enough of its chemical components to know that it closely parallels my own previous research. She's like, "Don't you see, Martine? It's the cure I've been racking my brains to find the process for reversing my affliction of quasi-vampirism." She's like, come on, I've got to get to to a light back to the room you rented so I can study the formula. She's like, but where did it come from, Michael? If you couldn't develop the formula, who could? He's like, what does it matter? Perhaps Draymond gave it to you to bribe you into servitude, or the caretakers. They're certainly far more scientifically advanced than anyone on Earth. He's like, it doesn't matter where it came from, Martine. It's enough that we have it. It means that we'll be able to live together again without the fear of the night, right? So he's pretty much trying to push this so he can go back to living and being who he was, right? And so while they're trying to get home, Werewolf by Night is running through the streets of LA. He just busted out of it was Ravencroft Hospital, and he's like, I paused where the scent was most pungent, and my loopy nostrils flared at its foul stench. So I resumed my pursuit for the increasing flesh spore, determined that it would halt in a congealing pool of bright blood. And while they're at the tar pits, right, he's like, "Are you sure it'll work, Michael?" He's like, "Sure enough to allow myself the first feeling of elation I've experienced since the experiment aboard the ship. Besides, other than a huge dose of horror, I haven't got much to lose. Or would you say?" And she's like, they're kind of like talking, they're looking away, and then they finally see Werewolf by Night. Morbius kind of ducks her down, and the two of them go back into fight. He's like, "Leave us before I thirst once again. The thirst over once again overcomes me. I know you're human and innocent, and you must understand me. There's no need to." And of course, he's an animal. He's not gonna listen to him, and he jumps on top of him and starts clawing at him. And the werewolf was opposed to amnesty and decided to reject it. We grappled in desperate savage combat. Each of us scrabbled at the other's face and chest, frantically seeking a death grip, but sustaining nothing more than a deadlock until the werewolf managed to clamp his talons on the neck of his foe's costume and ripped, right. And so he kind of grabbed on here and pulled um the sheet of paper out. And so Morbius, only wanting the formula because he wants to go back to being just Dr. Michael Morbius, not a living vampire. He smacks somebody, he's like, "You fool," and he tries to go after the paper, but Werewolf by Night doesn't let him, and he kind of tackles him forward, dropping him. He lets go of the paper, and the serum flies off, and the two of them fall towards the tar pits where Werewolf by Night picks him up, lifting him over his head and throwing him into this like dinosaur bone or whatever, this like the dinosaur skeleton. And so he drops onto the floor. There's a bone there, and he kind of whacks him, bonks him on the head. And it came from nowhere and shattered my skull like a crisp eggshell, spawning a sea of crimson starburst before my eyes. And he grabs onto that like necktie that he was wearing and starts to choke him with it and beat him with the bone, right? And he's like, "Another star explosion of stars, numbly a brutal blow to my gut," right? And so he kicks him into the tar pit. And if you guys don't know, the tar pits are used to kind of pull people in. And so the La Brea tar pits, the werewolf didn't know it, but he wasn't the first creature to feel the pit's embrace. The fossilized remain of many prehistoric mammals had been dredged from the tar, now to adorn ghoulish exhibits of bestial stupidity, right? And so while he's trying to get out, because it's kind of like a quicksand, right? He's sinking in a filthy version of quicksand, right? And she's like, "Michael, don't Michael, don't Michael, what will killing him accomplish?" And he's like, here, I'll zoom in here for you guys. But he's like, but the formula, Martine, because of him, it's gone, ripped from our grasp from a single moment of senseless violence. And he's like, "But think, Michael, why did you want the formula so desperately? Why did you treasure it? Because it meant an end to murder, an end to this enforced spree of violence and death. No one can blame you for succumbing to what you've become, for submitting to the thirst. But why kill him, Michael? You can't drink his blood. You'll kill him, and you'll be murdering for vengeance. It'll be the first true murder you've committed in your life. He's an innocent Morbius. We saw him as a human, no more than a youth, right?" And so she makes a valid point, right? Like if you kill him, you'll pretty much be a monster for the rest of your life. You won't actually be, a normal person. He's like, he's more than innocent, Michael. He's a victim just like you, a victim of a hideous existence. He neither wants nor controls. He neither wants nor controls. Kill him, Michael, and you'll kill my love. And so he drops the bone and walks off. She kind of drops this like rope for him and runs off with Morbius, where he steps on the paper, and then here's the formula. Anyone that is a chemist, or if we have any chemists in chat, this if you guys can decipher as much of this, I think this, if I'm not mistaken, this is ammonia. Um, but you know, or no, this is yeah, it should be ammonia, right? I don't know. But that's the end of that. That's all the comics I've brought you, and I know it's still a bit early. Usually a comic or my podcast runs for about an hour and a half. Um, I kind of wanted to take this time to talk about the special. If you guys haven't seen it, you guys can feel free to leave. If you guys don't want to be spoiled, I'll count you guys down, you know, as I normally do. But I mean, I figured since we're talking about Werewolf by Night, we talk a little bit about the special. But here, I'll count you guys down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, for those that are here and decided to stay with me, spoilers ahead. So we start, the thing kind of starts in like a darkened kind of like it's black and white, right? And the MCU logo plays, and it you have like thunder striking, and the screen turns from colorful to black and white, and from there you're kind of presented with this kind of like dome, I guess. It's like a glass dome kind of house in the middle of the forest, and you see a bunch of random people, and you follow this one dude, um and everyone's kind of admiring or standing around this area, and there's a tomb, or like a what would you call it, a damn, where you the place where you bury people, and inside, you don't get to see it open yet, but in front is a book with a red gem that is the bloodstone, right? And it's said to give a bunch of like properties. I promise next episode I'll go into more depth about it, because I do want to talk about Elsa Bloodstone, because she's probably, in my opinion, the most important of all three of those characters. Like, Jack is cool, and probably important as well, and so is Man Thing, but Elsa, in my opinion, is the most important, right? And you on the walls, like, and like around, there's like depictions of monsters and monster hunters, and they go into detail about it. Um, but the premise of it is you go into like a hunt. The people there are hunting, and there's this like Irish dude and whatnot, and they're talking about how many confirmed kills they have, and the camera pans to Jack, and Jack says that he's like 100 or so kills. And in the room there's only about 200 total kills. So Jack makes up most of the kills, right? Again, you don't know it's Jack, but unless you have subtitles on. But in comes Elsa, right? A lot of people get upset because they're like, she has no claim to this, because you're given a special seal to be able to hunt, and that's the goal. The people there are there for a hunt, and the winner of the hunt gets the stone, right? And Ulysses had set up a maze in his backyard um before he died. He wanted to be there in person, but he died, and so Ulysses sends them off to hunt. Elsa has claim to the Bloodstone because Elsa is it's Elsa Bloodstone, right? So um she has claim to the stone, and they head out to find their prey, the monster they're hunting, and they tell them like the only weapons you'll find are the weapons inside of the maze. So when they go out to hunt, you find Elsa, or you find Jack. Jack is the first one to go. They draw straws to see who goes first, and Jack goes first. And Jack goes in, and then eventually everyone else goes in. And Jack finds he crosses Elsa, and they kind of talk, and he tells her like, let's just pretend we never saw each other, right? Which is not expected. Most monster hunters would kill each other for the chance to kill the monster to then get the stone, right? If you get the stone, pretty much part of its properties include elongated life. So that's what a lot of people are searching for. There's also like extreme power and whatnot, but they um they end up going out to hunt, and while Jack and Elsa are talking, the big Irish dude ends up like coming in with his battle axe and slashing at them. Jack runs, and Elsa ends up fighting the dude, and both of them remain unharmed, but Elsa gets his battle axe, and she ends up running, and she runs into this other dude. The dude has like a crossbow on his arm, and he shoots at her and misses, and she ends up cutting his arm off. The dude ends up like tackling her, and she shoots him with his own crossbow, like straight through the mouth. And she's been hurt. She's like clipped in the stomach, and so when she runs into the room, she runs into like this like graveyard or whatever. Well, the whole thing's a graveyard, but it's like a room where all the coffins are. And so she runs in, and she's holding it, and in runs um what's his face, Jack, who's been hunted by someone else, right? So Jack runs in and closes the door, and Elsa tells him like, no, 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 don't close the door, and she's like, and we're trapped in here now. That door doesn't open from the inside; it opens from the outside, because inside is just a bunch of dead people. So Jack tells her like, I'm sorry to hear that, and he's like, they start talking about their family and their history and whatnot. And Jack doesn't get specific, but Elsa does, right? Elsa starts talking, because everyone knows who Elsa's parents are, especially how her dad was a famous hunter, the Bloodstone, right? Ulysses Bloodstone. Um, and so they end up talking about Elsa's aunt, who has like who's like was given a key, so she ends up opening up the door, and um they end up making a deal. He tells her that Jack ends up saying that he wants to save the monster, right? Because the monster's his friend, and that she wants to he'll give her the bloodstone if she can help him, because she wants, that's the reason she's there. She's hunting for the bloodstone, and so if she gets the bloodstone, she'll get what she wants, and then he'll get his friend, and the two of them can leave. And she agrees, because she's a monster hunter, but she's not like the other monster hunters where she kills just because the monsters are there. Like the monsters weren't willing. He wasn't like willing to hurt her, right? So the two of them go out, and she gives he has like this little grenade or whatever, and he tells her like call him by his name, and you know don't be like weird around him, right? Like don't because as we spoke about last time, werewolf by or man thing is a creature that's very much like wants or like senses fear, and when he senses fear, the acid in him turns you, yeah, kills you, right? And so um Elsa's running to him, and she gets stopped by another hunter, right? The big Irish dude. And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you," and he goes in with the battle axe, and Man-Thing comes in from behind and grabs him by the head and like melts him off and whatnot. And he goes to kill Elsa, and she's like, "Ted, I'm a friend, I'm here." And so he's like, "Okay, I guess he does. She does know me." He's like, "I'm with Jack. Come on." And the two of them leave. She throws her grenade into the wall, or Jack throws his grenade into the wall, and they escape. And Man-Thing ends up escaping, ends up running off. But Jack at the end, or I'm sorry, Elsa at the end pulls she has like this grappling hook. She pulls the bloodstone off of him, which was used to like weaken monsters. So she pulls it off. Jack goes to grab it, but because he's a monster and the bloodstone weakens monsters, he kind of like passes out, and everyone looks at him like he was a monster the whole time. So they imprison him and Elsa for helping a monster, right? And from there, there's a bunch of like cool Easter eggs, because apparently some people think that the um the people working in there are TVA guys, because they're like pruning people, but it's not, because if he would have been pruned, he wouldn't be there. Um, but they're using shock prods, I guess, to like shock Werewolf by Night, and they tell him like they're gonna use the Bloodstone to activate his werewolf abilities, and maybe or not Elsa will die. And he's like, they can't, because I only turn into a werewolf on full moons, and it's 3 days away from a full moon. He's like, no, no, the bloodstone can activate a monster's abilities, right? If you can turn into one, you'll be activated. And so he starts like smelling the crap out of her, like hopefully this works, right? And she's freaked out. They start using the stone to awaken him, and he becomes the monster. He ends up they end up shocking him, trying to kill him and whatnot from inside the cage, and smoke ends up building up inside the cage, and he uses that to be able to break out. Pretty much, he kills everyone. Um, Man Thing comes back because he knows Jack's been taken forever. Elsa ends up helping him. She gets the stone, and Elsa runs off, and Man Thing and Werewolf by Night head off into the forest, where um the ending of the God, what is that movie called? Um, Yo, you guys are gonna think I'm so dumb, but it's the one with Dorothy, the lion, and the the bear, the lion, and the Tin Man, and the scarecrow, and the golden guy. I almost said Alice in Wonderland, but I know that's wrong. God, I forgot what it was. Um, the one with the good witch and the bad witch. Um, the wicked witch. God, what the frick was that movie? Um, the movie that this one is based off of. Shoot. The Wizard of Oz, that's what it was. Yeah, so the ending to The Wizard of Oz plays, and or I think it's Somewhere Over a Rainbow, and they turn back into from black and white to color. You end up seeing Man Thing as the swamp creature. Jack had turned back into from Werewolf by Night to Jack, and you get to see Elsa for who she is. She does not have the orange hair, which I'm kind of upset about. Um, she does not. This is how she looks like in the comics, and this is how they have her played in the thing. She does not have the red hair. Guys, I'm upset. Um, fully upset. But that's the end of it. It was a very quick, like, one-off thing. It was very good. It was very well written, I think, in my opinion. Um, it wasn't scary, but it's like a horror thing. Because it has like its roots to like old Halloween movies, like those like movies from the 20s where people were afraid of like everything. Um, but that is pretty much Werewolf by Night, both the character and the TV show or the special, I guess. If you guys want to see more Werewolf by Night, I definitely recommend going back and watching my first video. The link is in the YouTube channel for the Darkhold one that talks about Werewolf by Night. Um, if I'm not mistaken, Ulysses was in that, as well as there had been talks about like lycanthropy in the Darkhold. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes in the um in the MCU, since we know from Doctor Strange that she destroyed all the Darkholds. So it'd be interesting to see how that works. But again, that's pretty much it for Werewolf by Night. There's not much more to talk about that I haven't already. He's been in a lot of other stuff, Midnight Suns, and all that kind of like teams and whatnot. He's done solo. There's been other werewolves. This one being the more prominent one. I think they came out with a new one in like 2020, but again, there's not much more to talk about with him. If you guys want more of that, I would recommend, or like horror stuff. I did talk about the Darkhold. Um, you guys can go back and watch that. If you guys want to vote on my next couple of characters, you can. I have a whole list of characters that I still have to do that I pretty much just took from you guys that you guys had been asking for a while. So all the characters that you guys have been asking for, I will plan on doing. Some of them won't be in order. Like I know I have Jury up, so I will probably do her for Black Panther 2 around November 11th. So which is the release date. So the 10th will probably be when I cover Jury. Um, I have a couple other characters. I have all the Eternals characters, the Eternals characters, Venom, Thanos, Deadpool, all new Avengers, the Purple Man, all these different kind of guys. But again, I promise I'll cover them. If you guys want any other character recommendations, the link is there. If you guys want to vote on what days you guys want to see me stream, the link is there. If you guys have any recommendations for the YouTube channel or for the videos, there's a link there to my email that you guys can use to vote for me. And then my YouTube channel is there for you guys to go back and watch previous videos. But that is all for this week. I hope you guys had fun. Happy Halloween. Again, sorry I missed out on last week. You guys will get Elsa next week. I promise, promise, promise. But that is all. Thank you guys so much for coming. See you guys next week.